an author. He's an amazing speaker as well. He's co-founder of Red Shoe Living. Would you want to just give us a little intro to who you are?
Yeah, you bet. So Red Shoes Living it's really a mindset and a framework that I created, gosh, it's going to make me sound old, 20 plus years ago. And the concept was created really to get people through difficult times in corporations, when corporations were being acquired and brought together and people were being let go and there was lots of change. And it was a way to really help individuals as you go through that process, kind of keep your spirit alive, your soul alive, and to continue to perform at a high level and not really compress. And along the way, we developed a framework around that turned into kind of a leadership component. It turned into a company culture component. It turned into a customer experience component. And then it turned into the way one lives their life. So in theory, when you stand out for the positive in the way that you work and the way that you live, you stand out like when you put a pair of red shoes on. And that's really the concept. So it's kind of a catchy, sticky thing for people and becomes very personal to them in terms of how they use it and apply it. So that's what I do.
Wow. You must be busy right now, since this is such a rocky time for corporations in America.
Yeah. And we're about to get busier with that, with, kind of people and certain parts of the world, of course, emerging, specifically in the United States. So companies are starting to come out of this, and employees, I think we'll have remote work environments for a long time. But how do we come out of this in a way that is different as it's going to be, and even better? Is there a way to make our work lives and our personal lives as we emerge even maybe better than they were before, with all the perspective we've had during this pandemic? So yeah, we're about to get busier. There's a lot of leaders and executive teams right now reaching out saying, hey, we want to re-inspire our team and give them a little different mindset as we come out of this. And so that's where we're spending a lot of our time.
Lonnie, can you hear me now?
We've got you, Terry.
All right. Yeah, it's like, I didn't know if you could hear me or not, but I could hear you now. And I'm so excited that you are making such a difference and impact with what you do. I've watched what you've been doing, and this message is so important right now for everyone. And tell us how we can ignite our own human potential. And I love some of your pillars that you talk about with your book. I know you have a new book out, and why you even started all of this. So tell me some of those pillars and how we can implement some of those things.
Yeah, and if I may, Terry, Nancy Williams, Red Shoes Living Chief of Staff, is on Facebook. So if there are any questions that come in specifically, she's
awesome.
much more red shoes than I am. Let me put it that way.
Right.
She'll be able to answer some of those questions along the way too. And yeah, as Elia and I were chatting, the concept came about some time ago. And, I recognize that there's really an empathetic view to Red Shoes Living, that when you're working with people and spending as much time as we do with the people that we work with and play with and live with and all these things, that we all have these incredible stories. We're all different. We're all unique. And yet in the corporate world, in the business world, we ask all of that diversity to kind of follow one mission, one vision. And sometimes that can be uninspiring to the individual. And so we wanted to find a way to actually reverse that model and go back. Terry, what's red shoes for you, as I kind of walk through it, is going to be different than what's red shoes for Elia or what's red shoes for me. And so that model and reversing that says, as a leader, as a human being, we have to connect at the core of what's important to you and be able to, we say, tap into that and bring that back into the business and understand it, pay attention to it, empathize with it, and then tie that back to the mission, vision, values of the company. And that standard is very high. So as leaders, it's difficult to do. And then there's always the line of how far should we take that? What's appropriate? But we found that when we do that, we get the best out of people. There's still accountability. We still hold people, accountable to being their best version of themselves. So it's really seeing the human being first, and then the title of the individual, if you will, second in every single, environment. Wow. So as Elia and I were chatting, as you were coming on, Terry, standing out for the positive in our work and in our personal lives, that we define that, and so again, tying that back together becomes important. So when we moved down the path of that, we said, what are the common traits? What are the common pillars between everybody in the world? And in fact, it's what's interesting to me through this pandemic is we're seeing it. We're seeing that the ego goes away, the title goes away, and you have two people that don't really care, where you are in the world, and they're sitting together saying, what can I do to support you? And, and conversely, that's Red Shoes. What we did is we got together, and this is 20 plus years ago, and said, what are the common traits? And we wanted to keep the framework of Red Shoes living simple so we all could apply to it. So we literally listed over 1,000 different attributes and traits, and love was one of them. And we thought, we probably can't at that time bring love into the business world. It's not going to resonate. It's probably a little too warm, even though we know it's there. So we came down to 5. There are 5 pillars. The first one is awareness. And each one of these pillars can be applied back to leadership, customer experience, culture, and the way we live our life. And they also represent, like, awareness is the first one, is being aware that in the world today, there's a lot of noise. Some of that noise is negative, some of it is positive, of course, but how do we turn down the negative noise so we can actually see the human being, so we can actually connect with the human being? Awareness is also saying we need to be aware of our mental health as leaders, and our physical health, if you will, if we want to perform at the highest level. It's being aware of great Red Shoes experiences that are happening right in front of us. And in fact, as it relates to that first pillar of awareness, we say, as a Red Shoes leader, one that stands out for the positive, you have to either witness a great Red Shoes experience or you have to participate in one. So awareness becomes the gateway to everything, that just heightened level of attention to the individual that's standing right in front of you. So that's the first one. And the second one is gratitude. We've, and Terry, and, I know you and Elia are exactly this type of individual, but gratitude is the number one trait that we find with successful people.
Love that.
Yeah.
Wow.
People are gracious for where they are in their career. And we don't define success. We've interviewed over 1,200 people and said, what are the secrets to your success? And gratitude always shows up. I think, gratitude says that even though we're going through tough times, what can we be grateful for? If we had a relationship that is no longer, what in that relationship were we grateful for during that time, right? Yeah. So it's really looking at every piece of adversity, everything, and trying to find something that you're grateful for and that was good. And what we found there is that grateful human beings are open. They're willing to let people come in. They're vulnerable. We're seeing a lot of vulnerability right now with leaders trying to help their employees feel safe. And so they're sharing more of their story as their pandemic.
I love that because how often have the work world or the corporate world thought of vulnerability as weakness?
Right.
And now we are looking at it as strength.
Yeah.
And they are having to be leaders right now.
Absolutely. And in fact, this week, Wednesday, and already I've met with probably 4 executives. And in every case, we were vulnerable with each other in terms of what we're experiencing. Because when you level that and you come to that place, then you can build from there. You can really achieve. Ungrateful leaders, by the way, are small. Their world is small and they keep it close to themselves, and the vulnerability is not there. And it's very hard to trust that type of leadership. It's very hard to follow that type of leadership. So gratitude, that's a practice that we bring in. So that's number 2. Number 3 is everybody has a story, just what you said. And this is really the empathy aspect of it. Today, everybody's working remote. Everybody has their own story. Connecting with those stories as a leader, as a human being, becomes really, really important. You have some people that are home alone. They have nobody there. You have other people that their children are home from school. They have pets. And I was on a call with a 401k company that I'm doing some work with here about 2 weeks ago. And I spoke with a lady, and in the middle of the conversation, she paused. And I said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "My husband of 72 years, or who's 72 years old and has liver cancer, just walked by me, and I was just watching how slow he was walking, and I'm so concerned." In an instant, I realized she's not in a corporate office. My mind assumed, and she was home. And so we just stopped and paused and talked about her husband for just a minute. And that was part of her story,
Yes.
So
Like, there's going to be so many stories that come from this,
yeah.
amazing stories.
Yeah. And I think,
yes.
I think understanding those stories, becomes critically important. In fact, we have people today that will say, they'll ask a question with their team. They'd say, Terry, where are you at today on a scale from 1 to 10? 10 being amazing and 1 being not so great. And they're trying to discover, in maybe a little more efficient way, where the baseline is. If you're at a 6 and a 7, that's probably not too bad under current circumstances. If you're in a 2, 3, and 4, we probably need to have a deeper discussion. Let's talk about that. What can I do to help get you to a 5, 6, and 7? And that changes daily.
Yes, I'm sure it does. So are you working with corporations now and companies and
we are.
during this time and trying to, and has the narrative changed?
Yeah, well, it's incredible. And, Nancy Williams, our chief of staff, again, who's on Facebook, will tell you that we feel like we're not doing enough. We met yesterday and said we need to be doing more because we know how powerful the message is, especially at this time. And so we're getting ready to get even busier and doing some work with companies. But we work with, we have our speaking business, which, like both of you, just changed overnight. We've done virtual events. And so for us, the biggest part of our business that's growing is actually going in and working with the leadership teams and executive teams and taking this Red Shoes Living mindset and framework into them. And that we can do that pretty effectively through Zoom. And there's a cadence to it. And so but what we've learned is leaders are carrying such a load today. And that's the reason we start with them. Is they're trying to make everybody that they work with still feel safe, and that started almost immediately. But now you've got people that are no longer working in an organization where they've worked for 20 years and they have a friend that is working, and so you've actually got people with survivor's guilt, because they're getting paid and somebody else isn't.
True. I've noticed that with some people. Yes.
I feel that way as just as a normal person, because I know people here that have, in the tourism industry, for example, Italy is one of its biggest industries is tourism, and no one is working right now. The tour guides, the people that own the bed and breakfast, the little mom and pop hotels and the big hotels as well. And they are all without jobs, probably for the whole year.
Yeah.
And I've had this kind of survivor guilt of, gosh, I wish I could help them. I feel bad that almost that it hasn't happened to me in some way, because it's horrible to see that many people around that you love just have the whole world taken out from under them without much explanation and justification that makes you feel good.
That's right. Yeah. And so, in an instance like this, the question would be for us would be, how would you red shoes that? How do you red shoes as somebody transitions out of a company? There's a way to actually do that in a red shoes way. It's not a positive experience, but what can we do to make sure as they depart the company to make that experience as good as possible? Right. So your mind is constantly thinking about that, or people that have been furloughed. There needs to be a communication plan with people that have been furloughed that's red shoes, because they're still part of something, even though they've been furloughed. And so how do you communicate with them? So these are the types of things that we're talking about. In the instance
Can you lead us through like a 1 minute little, like really fast session of like, this is what we do?
Yeah.
It's really helpful.
Yeah. So here's the beauty of Red Shoes Living. If you ask yourself the question in everything that you do, what I'm about to do is at Red Shoes. Just that one question, that mindset says, how do I show up for you on this Facebook Live event in a Red Shoes way? I need to be on time and, in fact, early. I need to be prepared and polished, right? I need to be open and vulnerable. Like, these are the way that your mind thinks. So whether it's a positive thing that's happening or a negative thing, you put the Red Shoes mindset at the center. And then these pillars, these 5 pillars that we were walking through, that becomes the foundation you come home to. Mm-hmm. Without the pillars, you have the mindset. So let's say we go, restaurants start to open, we go back to a restaurant, server comes up. Immediately we're seeing a human being first that we know has a story that we haven't connected with yet, that is a server second, right? That is serving us. So if we create an environment that is Red Shoes for them and they step into that, how much better is that service potentially going to be? What kind of a connection can we make? And so, we're changing the experience. It takes a little bit of work on both sides, right? Sometimes we have to bring people into our environment to make them red shoes. Sometimes we have to remind people. That's why awareness, Terry, becomes such a big part of this.
Yes, I was just going to mention that. I mean, if we're so busy in the future or the past or our old thinking, it's really a challenge to be aware of these pillars. But I think red does stand out. So I think wearing red shoes, that's why I'm wearing red today.
Right. Thank you.
And I do think, we have to kind of snap ourselves out of that. And I do think what you are teaching, what Red Shoes is teaching, is really bringing us back to the basics.
Yeah, that's
foundation
it.
Of humanity.
Right.
I mean, Lonnie, is this something that you believe, like, especially since this is such a rare time right now where everything has been completely shaken up? I mean, is this something that you believe we could adopt for the rest of our way?
Yes.
Not even life, like all of, truly a different way of thinking and a different way of living that us as a community.
Yeah. What I would tell you is it was designed because there was so much noise in the world that this concept is actually not mine, it's ours. The noise of business, the noise of KPIs and metrics and money, and all of which is important to run a big company, or the noise in our personal lives that happen, it becomes so large, we forget the basic things. We forget kindness. We forget awareness. Terry, like you said, if we're not living in the present, if we're planning, way too ahead in the future, we never actually get there. And if we're just living in the past, we can't get out of it. And so we get in the flow, we stay, right in the moment. So what we discovered, it's in some cases, it's a reminder of what people already know. In the busy, noisy corporate world where people were driving fast, it was easy to wake them up in 1 hour. And we knew that. We could wake them up in an hour and say, look, we're going to tell you something you already know. And as Nancy would say, if she was on the audio with us, she would say, once you know this and know it again, you're never going to forget it. And it's going to haunt you. So when you don't apply it, it haunts you, and you're like, I could have created a red shoes moment, or I could have been such a better leader, or I could have created, more in the culture. I could have contributed more. Or during this time, if red shoes for me was being healthy and I wasn't healthy, I know better. Why did I not do that?
Wow. So do you create like an experience? So when they experience in the inside or in their body, or they're living it, they're taking action, that once they experience that, it's almost like a good drug, right?
Oh yeah, it is.
I want to go back to it.
Yeah. So here's a curse though. And I want to finish on the pillars too, because for those that are listening in, I think this will be helpful for them, but there is a curse to this. And I literally call it the curse of red shoes. And that is that a red shoes leader believes there's always a better way. There's always more you can do to stand out. And early on, we were putting so much pressure on executive teams and leaders to stand out in everything they did, from an email they wrote to how they answered the phone to how they communicated to the products they were, and service they were providing, that it was never good enough, because you could keep red shoes, the thing further. So what we said is you have to know when good is good enough. When I wrote the book, I drove the team crazy that I wrote the book with, because they kept saying, Lonnie, this is red shoes. And I'm like, no, we could do better. So you have to know, and the way I always describe it is, once we can go back on vacation, and go back on a beach, a red shoes leader in the old days would sit on that beach and go, you know what, there's probably a better beach. I could probably create a better experience for my loved ones that are with me. What we say, once in a while, you just have to sit there and say, look, this is a good enough beach. It's red shoes already. The book is red shoes already. We've thought as much through this as we possibly can. And so here's one other thing I have to share with you. Once you catch this concept, and I'll finish the pillars, and it becomes part of you, it becomes very passionate because it's yours. It's your personal red shoes view of the world. As you elevate that game up, and let's say on a scale from 1 to 10, you're already an amazing red shoes person, and you're at a 7. Your 7 right there, as you start to develop more of the red shoes mindset, is better than most people's 10s, because the level of awareness and the application of the framework that you're applying. And so even Nancy some days will say to me, hey, Lonnie, you're at a 4, but because you're red shoes, your 4 is probably better than most people's 10s, but you need to be at a 7. You need to be at an 8. You need to work here. You need to be doing more of this. Like, she holds me accountable to that level, right?
Yes.
So just to recap, if I may, really quick, and then I'll turn it back over to you guys on the pillars. So you have awareness, gets applied in all those categories we talked about. You have gratitude. You have everybody has a story. So connecting with each other's stories on a daily basis, the people that you work with or for, your family, they change every day. Nancy will ask me what my story is for the day, and she gauges her interaction with me and experience based on where I'm at, and I do the same with her. So that's number 3. Number 4 is kindness and respect. Some of the most fiercely competitive, hardest charging leaders that I've met in my life are also kind and respectful. Doesn't mean that they don't hold you accountable. They're going to hold you accountable to whatever it is the company or, the sports team is doing. But they're going to do it in a kind and respectful way. So in return, you want to run through walls for them. Kindness and respect today. In fact, through the pandemic, I'm seeing so much kindness, so much respect.
Yeah.
And the healthcare workers and the doctors and the scientists. And I mean, just, and so applying that becomes incredibly powerful. Before pandemic, it was even more powerful. Now we're seeing more of it, which is a beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. So the 5th one, after kindness and respect, is put yourself out there. You have to act. You have to do. So for me to create a Red Shoes experience, or to be a Red Shoes leader, or to be a Red Shoes human being, I like to try to go through all 5 of those in an instant. So sometimes you get through the first 4, but if I don't do something for both of you, if I don't do something, like if I don't show up on the show, or if I don't follow back up, or if we've talked about something that's important to you and I don't acknowledge that and do something, then the Red Shoes moment is incomplete for me. That's how I take it. If that makes sense.
So Lonnie, it's not just sitting in the background is what you're saying. You can be thinking these things, but it's actually doing something.
You've got to write a handwritten note to somebody that says, look, I saw what you did. It was amazing. And I just wanted to thank you for that. Or whatever it is. And Terry, to that point, the most powerful form of Red Shoes is subtle and small. The most powerful Red Shoes leaders that I've worked with are quiet, not talking all the time like I do, or loud. It's the little things that sometimes make the biggest difference and create the best Red Shoes experiences that I've seen. So
yeah, I completely agree. I mean, how about the times when you're in a grocery store? I think about this, and if I consciously want to make a difference, just smiling at someone, saying without any words, I see you. And I don't know what your story is, but I see you. And you know those moments where they go, oh my goodness, that person just looked at me in a way that I might have changed that person's day or their life.
Right.
And that's what I feel like you're saying. And it's taking everything, and these pillars are just such great lessons for all of us in all areas of our life is how I look at this. Yeah. And you are a great example of this. I've seen you live this way, and acknowledgement is such a big part of it. And I don't think that we acknowledge people enough. We're usually looking at what people are doing wrong instead of acknowledging what they're doing right, or just who they are. Yeah.
Especially in the corporate environment.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
That's the way to communicate, I feel like, in the corporate environment much of the time.
Yeah. We've seen we've seen things like this in the corporate environment where we start to apply these things as a leader. You might be in a meeting, and maybe there's an interaction in that meeting between a leader and his teammate where there's lots of people that isn't the same as it normally is. Maybe it's a little bit rough, or a little bit curt, or a little bit angry. And I've watched leaders pause, because awareness kicks in, because that becomes the gateway, right? And they pause for a minute and they say, you know what, let me say that again. I really apologize. I know that came across a little bit direct and maybe unkind, and I didn't mean it to. And I'm aware that I just did that. That's Red Shoes already right there. What I was really trying to say is, you're doing a good job, but I need you to do more. I need you to do whatever. That moment is Red Shoes, hopefully for both parties.
So beautiful. We have a lot of great questions coming in for Lonnie. Let's see. So we have, is it Janelle from Italy? Incredible philosopher and educator, talks about the caring circle and how your action has to reach the other person and come back to you to make it complete.
Yeah, I love that. And so that's interesting, because you know, I've been in situations myself where you think you're connecting and you put it out there, but if it's not actually coming back and being received the way you think it is, then it is incomplete, you know? And so there is a real, at the end of a day, I made a comment at a conference I spoke at one time. I said, at the end of a day, a Red Shoes leader should be exhausted. And a lady came up to me afterwards and she said, I understood what you were trying to say. She said, but wouldn't a Red Shoes leader actually sleep well at night instead of being totally exhausted? And she started to explain that to me. And I thought about that. And she's right. You know, we should be nourished and feel good about it. It's not always about giving it all away. It is taking it back the other way as well to fill you up, you know? So
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So
It's
Lonnie,
something I actually teach with, I'm a public speaking coach, Lonnie, as well as an actress. And it's one of the things I teach is active listening, that it's not just about you, right? You have to listen to who you're talking to, especially in live video, like with Zoom, but even even when you're in front of a big audience, you really have to listen to the other person. And a lot of times what you find is by the end, if you've really been actively listening, meaning I am aware of what you are doing and giving me as much as what I am doing and giving you, by the end, you're usually rather tired because it takes a lot of energy to be that open and receive and really, read all the signals. But it is so much more of a complete and beautiful and compassionate experience, and your relationship with that person or those people is so much fuller and more real because of it. But I do find it very tiring if you've done it well.
You know, I have a comment or a little secret that I was taught, because I totally agree with you there. And in fact, when I would speak, people wanted to share their stories and how they connected with it. And, you know, and it was tiring because they were such deep stories, and this sounds completely disrespectful, and I didn't know how to respond. And I was speaking with a friend of mine, a Jewish rabbi, one time, and I was explaining this to him, and he said to me, Lonnie, I understand that feeling, because as a rabbi, you know, there's very deep conversations, and and serious conversations, and I would be so tired at the end of the night until somebody told him that if you connect and crack somebody open in a way that's emotionally meaningful, it's your responsibility to hear them out. And he said, and so here's what I did. He said, I started listening. That's all he said. And I said, explain. And he said, what I was doing was trying to solve. And I quickly just started listening to their stories, honoring the fact, and Terry, you made this comment earlier, seeing them as a human being. It didn't mean I had to solve everything right then.
right,
What you're
exactly.
trying to do is solve everything for them in your own mind or even verbally. They just want you to listen. So what it did for me now, one of my favorite things is that after an event, when people want to come up and share their stories, I just listen, you know, and if I can offer something up, I do. And it's become so much more meaningful to me and I think for them too, you know, it's just this place of coming together and sharing some stories that are meaningful for each other. And the other part of it is for me that I've discovered is I learn from them. In their story and how they tell it to me and process it, I learn something that I can now take back to my own Red Shoes way of doing things and go, ooh, I really like what you said. And I'm going to start applying that. So Red Shoes is an evolution. It's no longer mine. Everybody contributes to it. It's always a new idea, a new way of doing things. And so it's kind of exciting.
Wow. I just love this conversation. I really, I just think about listening, such a gift. Such a gift. We all want to be heard and listened to. Think about our children, how much of the time we were trying to fix them or change them or give them advice, and all they really wanted is for us to listen to them. So it's really a gift. And I have another question for you, Lonnie. I don't want to finish this conversation or interview without knowing this. I know that you have a story, and I'm just, I'm so curious about where this came from for you to have this passion to come up with these pillars and Red Shoes living. And I know it's probably in your book, which I want to make sure everyone knows how to get a hold of your book. But tell us a little bit about, where this came from within you.
Yeah. It's interesting, Terry, the story for me is still evolving in terms of, things that I've discovered, like many people do later in life, about my childhood and various things there. So it's been interesting for me to kind of look back even deeper to that question. But as I was growing up, I had great examples in my family of this, and we were taught to, always see people for who they are at a very early age. My grandmother, who helped raise me, my father passed away. So here's the crazy part of the story. My father was a professional wrestler and died when I was 10 years old. My mother and my father had been separated for a couple of years when he passed away. But when I would spend time with my father, I would watch how he interacted with his fans. And I do talk about this in the book, but he treated everybody with kindness and respect. It's similar to, in fact, he wrestled Dwayne Johnson's father, Rocky Johnson. So yeah. So The Rock, I'm wearing red shoes and he's the highest paid actor in the world. So somewhere, I don't know what happened, where I went wrong, but he's a great example, by the way, of what I'm talking about. He's fiercely competitive. He outworks everybody. He wants his product to be the best, but he literally treats people with as much kindness, respect, and accountability to be their best as anybody I've ever seen. But I had these experiences where I watched my dad, who could have had this larger than life ego, but he didn't. And when he passed away, thousands of people showed up to his funeral to honor stories about him giving his wrestling boots away and various things. My mother was the same way. To this day, my mother is probably the best example of red shoes. She kind and sweet and, stands out for the positive. My grandmother, and I'll share this quote with you, my dad's mother, who welded ships when she was 8 months pregnant with my father during World War II. Whole story behind that I've also written in the book. She had a quote that when I was growing up, she would tell me, and she was always concerned about one's ego. And she said, we all bring some ego to everything we do, but you have to think, Lonnie, about your intention. What intention are you bringing to this Facebook Live today? What ego are you bringing to this? And once you understand what that is, you can gauge it. You can move it. Sometimes we need to move our ego up a little bit. Sometimes we need to move it down. So she taught us that. And then the quote was that she would tell me all the time, treat those who have more than you as equals, and those who have less than you as kings and queens.
We'd say that one more time. Say that one more time. Treat them.
Treat those who have more than you, whatever more is, as equals, and those who have less than you as kings and queens. And she would say, if you live your life that way, it'll count for plenty. And I am definitely not perfect. No one is, but I try to keep that in my mind every single day. So when I go back and think of my father, and I go back and think of my grandfather, and I go back and think of the mentors I've had, that level of respect, the world that they create, the space that they create for you to step in and be your best self, that's what that quote is really all about. So it's been in me. And then as my father passed away, my uncle was a turnaround guy. And every summer I would travel with him and he'd have me come into meetings, and I watched him, hard charging executive, but from the front office receptionist, when he walked in the door, to the people in the plants, to the people in the office, there was an accountability that was always there, but he treated people with such kindness and respect. When he passed, the same thing happened. Thousands of people showed up to tell stories about these moments in time where he created what I now call a red shoes experience for them. And so people would run through walls for him. So that's just been in me. And I thought whatever I do in my life, whether it's, corporate America or going to the grocery store, I want that to show up and do my part in that. So
Lonnie,
can I ask, like, as almost like a next natural lead from your story to this question I've had is, so in this time right now, which is a very tumultuous time for all of us, and for some people it's been a positive time for many reasons, finding silver linings, having time to do things. Many of us don't have time at all to do things because we have young children, or work that we're trying, but there's a lot going on. So how do we hold on to a sense of purpose and reason to show up and get excited every day in such a moody, tumultuous time? Yeah. Like, coming from your story, I think you can directly apply that, but I just want to hear it from you.
Yeah. Well, I think, and I include myself in this, I think everyone is going through that, right? And you think about, like Simon Sinek talks about knowing your why, and a lot of people talk about knowing your purpose. Well, a lot of that has changed, and I've been talking a lot about rhythm. We had a cadence and a rhythm to us that had been developed over years and years and years and years. And then all of a sudden it was completely shattered. And so, we probably woke up at some level the first couple of weeks and thought, well, this is great. I know we had a lot of friends that were, hey, let's do happy hour, and we're all home, and then the kids weren't in school, and then the dogs were running in front of Zoom, like all that stuff happened. And it humanized us in a fun way. But then, by about week 3, then what is the purpose? Am I going to keep my job? I love my partner, but now they're sitting with me working every single day. And, so the rhythm became confusing, and people struggled, including me. Now we can't go outside, or, now I used to get up really early and do X work, but I need to make breakfast for the children, or I need to make lunch, or a friend's calling me who didn't work anyway and said, hey, since you're not working, can we go on a hike? Or so for me, I've had to sit in some of those moments. What I used to do is, if I had a moment like that, I put myself out there. I just created action. I would just say, well, let's just figure this out. Let's redesign the strategy, redesign my personal purpose, set my goals, and wake up and go. And that's what I did for years and years. Well, I couldn't do that. And so I, like everybody else, went through a little bit of a rhythm shift, and I felt guilty at times about it. If I sat in it, literally sat, there's a couch in my office that I would sit on and go, what should I be doing right now? I think I should be working, but work has changed. And so I had to look at this and say, there's a new purpose. There's a new rhythm. And I think incrementally and slowly, and then you reach out to your, what I call model of sustainability, your friends, family, and mentors. Everyone started to talk about that. And everybody started, just like what we're doing now, we're sharing some of these thoughts and ideas. And slowly the rhythm started to change. Slowly you started to accept the new way, not in its entirety, because we still don't know what it's going to be, a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, but it's going to be different. And the purpose came back. In fact, Nancy and I, again, our chief of staff, we froze for about 3 weeks because we had personal stuff going on. I had some personal stuff going on. And then we woke up to the purpose again and said, wait a minute, we need to share this message to help with what you just asked me the question on, people to kind of start coming back out of this,
Yes. And that's where we're at. Yes,
yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
So it's a long response, but that's the way we're looking at it now. So
love it. I think we are. I love how you say we have snapped out of it. Like all of a sudden you're like, you know what? We need to start living again, or figure out how to do that, or how to, live our full potential, even though this is unknown. I mean, I think that's where I've been at in the last week or two. It's like, I can still envision an amazing life and living my full potential, even though I don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
How do we do that?
Yeah. I think it's a little bit, for anybody, probably everybody that's ever gone through a breakup or a relationship, it's almost like that. We broke up with our rhythm, and all of a sudden, we had a new partner or not, and a new rhythm. And so we had to kind of figure out who are we now? Who do we want to be? An Indian friend of mine said to me on Monday, he said, Lonnie, one of the things that's occurred to me going through this is, what has this opened up for me? What is the new opportunity, whether it's professionally or personally? So one of the things he's been doing now that he's in Switzerland right now, but he's getting out a little bit, and he's getting out into nature, which is something he's never done before. He's never actually heard the birds. And he made the observation the other day, the reason he's hearing the birds, his awareness is up, but there's less cars, there's less noise in the world. So when you think about kind of the, how that analogy connects with Red Shoes Living, it was always about turning the noise down and doing the things we know we should be doing. Well, naturally that's happened. If we pay attention, you're going to hear the birds. The sun, literally, as I'm talking to you right now, the afternoon sun here in Park City, Utah is beautiful, and it's just starting to kind of poke out. My awareness immediately kicked in. I went, oh, here's that time of day. It's my new rhythm. I probably didn't pay as much attention to it pre-COVID-19. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That I think the silver lining right now is that this has the noise has been quieted down, and now we can hear our own heart, our own soul, our human spirit, and really what we're all about. And Lonnie, we could talk for hours about this. And I first of all just want to thank you for passing along your legacy from your family. and really making a change. And I know that just by listening today that I'm going to start living a red shoe living, right? And I'd like everyone, all of our audience right now, we have tons of questions. I'd like to wrap this up with how we can get a hold of you, how they can get a hold of your book, and also maybe just answer a few questions. And anybody listening right now, we will answer your questions, and we'll reach out to Lonnie and make sure that he gets your questions.
Yeah, thank you. And so first and foremost, on the questions or any questions you might be thinking about, I'm going to give you my email address. It's Lonnie@redshoesliving.com. If you go to our website, either redshoesliving.com or lonniemayne.com, Nancy, who is the ultimate in Red Shoes leadership, has her email and phone number on there, and you can connect with her. We respond to everything, every text message, every email. Sometimes it takes us a little bit of time. And we would love for you to read the book. It's a very straightforward and meaningful read. You can buy, it's Red Shoes Living, Standing Out for the Positive and How You Work and Live. You can find it on Amazon. The audiobook is about 30 days out. Through the pandemic, it was delayed a little bit. You can get it on Kindle, of course. And yeah, I mean, we're on the social channels. The other part of this really quick, and we'll answer the questions, is that we are learning as much from kind of the community of Red Shoes leaders than we are trying to put back out, because people are finding new ways to live their life in a Red Shoes way, and it is incredibly inspiring. So we become better when people share their stories, communicate with us. So we're thankful and grateful for all of that.
Thank you so much, Lonnie.
Thanks so much.
So Elia, I know that I think Nancy is responding to some of the comments there. So Elia, I don't know if you've seen some of those that you want to respond to or not.
Now I'm on my cell phone. I'm doing the Facebook Live through my cell phone, so I can't see any comments.
Okay.
So maybe you can ask them, Terry.
Perfect. Well, one I just loved. So Janelle, which I had her question earlier, but she said, "Oh my God, Lonnie, I've watched your dad wrestle."
Oh, no way.
Oh my gosh. Great. It's a small world, isn't it? It's
yeah. Well, just so Janelle knows, I took after my mother, just so you know.
So no wrestling skills.
Yeah, no, my dad was this big, crazy, awesome guy, right? Blonde hair, big blonde beard, and was a crazy looking character. So yeah, that's why I say I took after my mother.
I love it. Okay. And here, let's see, here's some more. Let's see. We had so many people commenting. When you can't find the sunshine, be the sunshine. And that is from Nancy, which I love. And Gabriella Bondi, is she from Italy, I think?
Yeah.
Yes, the pandemic was kind of like hitting the rest button. People have become more kind and respectful.
Yeah.
So a lot of comments have come from this. One last question from Ingrid. I don't know where Ingrid is from. I am curious how the way to manage in leadership is going to change. Now more people will be working from home, different kind of cooperation, which I think you addressed.
Yeah, I think leaders are going to have to continue to be more empathetic, and we're surely getting that question, and some leaders are better at it than others. I think just understanding, how people are working from home and how things are changing on a daily basis, and check-ins are going to become a little more important. That's why I said scale from 1 to 10. Where are you at? I'm at a 5. Let's talk. If you're at an 8 or 9, I probably am going to move on to the person that's a 3 or 4, because 8 or 9 is pretty good. But yeah, it's going to change dramatically. And I think it's going to put a big burden on those that are leaders, and it should, because we have to continue to make those that we work with and live with feel safe. We have to continue to inspire them. We have to create meaningful work. We have to still hold each other accountable to the businesses that, we run. But at the end of the day, I think if we do that, we're all going to grow together and be kind to ourselves. And leaders specifically right now, and I'm kind of even thinking of myself, we have to be kind to ourselves, because we're never going to be enough, and we can never do enough. But doing more is better than not. So that's what I would say.
Thank you, Lonnie.
I even found myself, sorry, Terry, in this moment, Lonnie, I've had because of what I do as a speaker and communication coach, I I've had this boom in this period of people need me. They need me to teach their companies and their sales force and their leaders how to communicate well through live video, because they've never had to do it before. And I've actually noticed that the leaders that are not as kind, I just don't really feel like working with them right now, because I'm not in a moment. I'm luckily in a moment where I can kind of choose, because I don't have an enormous amount of time. So I kind of can choose my clients, and I don't really want to work with the people that are just not very nice right now, because there's an energy out there towards understanding and humanity and kindness right now that was not as present before.
Yeah, you just hit on something. You hit on it perfectly. And I know we're probably out of time, but even I have done that. And in the book, we talk about the model of sustainability. And right now, Nancy and I have had to go through this process. We're not excluding anybody from this model of sustainability, but we've had to be very careful who we work with from an energy standpoint, because there are so many people that actually need and want the energy, that if you are working with individuals that are taking that energy away, you're actually cheating those that are asking for it the most. So during this time, we're doing our best to help everybody, but it's why I'm with you today. We're spending our time with those that are kind of giving as much energy as we're trying to give, because that's it. That's where we're all going to rise. The others will come along. Yeah. They will come along, and somebody will help them, right? And we're trying, but right now it's key to keep good people, pulling everybody along. Even leadership at, the political levels and everything like that. It's really difficult right now. People want a beacon of light. That's what they want.
Right. They do. So thanks, Lonnie, for being that beacon of light.
Thank you, guys.
Yes. And so, Lonnie, just as we wrap up, this has been so energizing and illuminating. And I think you have ignited the human potential today. So I just hope that everybody really focuses on the 5 pillars of awareness, gratitude, respect, kindness, putting yourself out there, and that everyone has a story. Right. And together we can really make a difference. And thank you so much for joining us. Is there one last thing you want to say?
You know what? I would just say, just keep moving, being kind to yourself, and small incremental changes every hour, every day add up over time. And I would just tell you, just keep doing that. And thank you. Grateful to be here with you guys.
Thanks, Lonnie. And thanks, Elia.
Thank you. And actually with that, Lonnie, I'm gonna just say to our viewers that Terry and I have decided to keep moving as well. And so from today's show, we're gonna take a little pause. Doesn't mean we're not gonna have more shows, but since the economy and the world is kind of revving back up, albeit slowly, Terry and I feel the desire to just move a little bit and see where it takes us. So we're going to take a little pause with our Facebook Lives. When necessity calls, we will be back. So stay tuned. Of course, we'll let you know when our next show will be. Terry, do you want to tell everyone what you're going to be up to soon?
Well, you just follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and I will be having some educational videos and webinars and lots of fun things happening. So we're all just trying to move forward and inspire the human potential in corporations and individuals. So just stay tuned. We'll have more live Facebook Lives coming up.
Absolutely. And I'm about to launch a series of webinars and group programs on public speaking and communication and stuff. So if you want to look on my Facebook page, it's Elia Nichols Public Speaking, and I will keep you tuned there. So thank you all for being loyal, wonderful listeners, for writing in all of your questions. Terry and I have felt very grateful to all of you, and we'll see you soon.
Absolutely. And we'll answer all your questions. All right. Take care.
Thanks again, Lonnie.
Thank you, guys. Take care. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.